Hello and welcome to another episode of Feeding Fatty. I'm Roy.
I'm Terry.
So we are the podcast that we like to chronicle my journey, and Terry is my support mechanism. So we like to talk about our different challenges, successes, and things that we've learned along the way through getting healthy, weight loss, and we also have guests that have awesome stories to tell, professionals in the field that can give us some actionable items. So today, without further ado, let's introduce our guest.
Okay, we are very happy to have Dai Manuel. He is a super dad dating his wife and currently doing life with his family around the globe. He is also an award-winning digital thought leader and author, executive performance coach, and certified lifestyle mentor who empowers people to lead a functionally fit life through education, encouragement, and community. Dave, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Terry and Roy. That was a nice little introduction. I was like, wow, I think I might have almost wrote that myself. I was
Sounds familiar.
but
Thanks so much for taking
thanks.
time out of your day to be with us. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh man, well, you know what? I just keep thinking about the title of your podcast, right? Feeding Fatty, and it's such a great name, and it brings back lots of memories for me. I'll tell you, because listen, I think we can all relate to that. We've all had periods in our life where we fall out of health, and when we're in that space, it certainly feels like we're just feeding fatty. You know? And I've lived in that space, so I know it very well.
Yeah, we kicked it around, Terry. When we started this, Terry's like, we really need to chronicle this because not only is it for my accountability, but there are other people out there with the struggle as well. And we were kicking around names, and I just jokingly threw that out there. And she's like, "That's it. That's the one."
Like healthy lifestyle, fitness for you.
Because the other part of that, I think, is that no matter how healthy I make it, hopefully to get in the future, is that, I always have to be careful because I think once it's like being a diabetic. Once you've been fat, you can get that way again very easy if you don't watch yourself. And so that's the other thing is that, we can do a lot of stuff to get healthy, but it's trying to do it in a manner that we can do it for a long, long time.
Lifestyle.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Wow. It's all about sustainability, right? Lifestyle. I mean, it's
Right.
lifestyle. We're always
Right.
looking for that thing where we just don't even have to think about it anymore. We just sort of live into it. And I think that's the thing that we're all aiming for.
Yeah. Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about your history and how you got to where you are now and what's going on?
Sure. Well, I mean, thank you for asking that. I think we all have, I'm a big Marvel fan or comic book fan, and I always like the origin stories, right? And, just keeping to the theme of your podcast, even though I'm someone I've actually I've had a career in the wellness and health industries now for 26 years. 26 years.
Wow.
My entire adult life, I've worked in the fitness and the wellness spaces in various capacities, obviously. And I love it. It's a big part of what I just love to do. I love to empower people with change. And I didn't come to that naturally, though. I think a lot of people, especially in the fitness space, a lot of people tend to be athletes or people that have a very natural lifestyle that's embraced athleticism, they've just been active their entire life. And I love that. I think it's inspiring, but I am not that person. I came from the opposite end. And this is where I find another contingency within the wellness industry, where it's people that are now working in it because they themselves have already had this massive shift or transformation, an awakening, or really they just prioritized their health and made some changes. And I'm from that camp. I was morbidly obese as a teenager. So from the age of 9 to 14, well, listen, it wasn't rocket science, that got me there. In fact, it was just really simple. I ate a lot of foods that were very poor in nutrition value, yet rich in calories. And I did that frequently. And also I had a lifestyle that was, well, let's just put it this way. The majority of my time, free time, was spent watching movies or playing video games, and compound that day in, day out for a period of about 5 years. Well, yeah, I didn't grow up I grew out.
Right,
Uh,
exactly.
and I can laugh about it now, but to be honest and fully transparent with you, at that age, I was battling depression, a lot of
Yeah,
anxiety, a lot of just self-doubt, and
yeah,
a lot of the, and I hate to use the word cliche because today, when we hear obesity or even the term morbid obesity, it is like regular in our vernacular
right,
now, right? I mean, you can't help
exactly.
but look on the feeds and we see these words coming up. You look at the World Health Organization talking about this global pandemic outside of COVID, but I mean, it's an issue before COVID was this
Right.
issue
Right,
of just the rise in people's weight and the increase of health complications as a result. And, back then, childhood obesity wasn't even something that you would put together. I was one of two kids in my class that was in that state of unhealth,
yeah,
and so it was very alienating. And to be fair, I think I alienated myself more than others were alienating me, if you know what I mean. Like
yeah.
I wasn't good in
It,
social settings, and
it's a
yeah, and that's
tough,
where
that's a
I
tough
started. So
age.
sorry, go ahead, Roy.
No, no, I was just gonna say, that is, it's such a tough age, and I gotta hand it to you that you overcame it, even because that, unfortunately, those, the ridicule, the self doubt, everything kids go through at that time period, sometimes it leads to even worse troubles as adults. So I think, congratulations that you were able to work yourself out of that. It's amazing because I'm the opposite. I was skinny as a kid, like to skinny to the point of my grandparents would be like, "Oh my God, you got to eat something. We need you to eat," because I was just very thin. But I beefed up through high school and athletics, and then put my weight on as an adult. So luckily, I've never been chastised too much, so I can't even imagine what you must have gone through, as that age group.
Yeah, I mean, children are mean because they don't know any
Yeah, I was
better
going to
most of the
say
time.
just that.
But I was going to say
Yeah,
teens can be cruel, like
right,
it's
right.
really, and so, I had a few friends. But even then, if we were hanging out, it wasn't like we were playing video games, or
Right,
watching
right.
movies or eating junk. It's just, I
Right.
had that body type because I'd been doing that for so long. Like I have a body type that it is fairly easy for me to put on weight. It
Yeah.
is. I can, but I mean, it works to my advantage as well because as soon as the flip switched,
Exactly.
or sorry, yeah, right. I flipped the switch as soon as that
Yeah.
happened, and I
Switch.
made that
Yeah.
shift.
Right.
It worked to my advantage because especially when I got into weight training and more resistance type training, I I saw myself develop much more musculature, so developing muscle
Yeah.
mass. But I also changed how I fueled myself, so I started
Yeah.
eating different foods, foods that were more in alignment with the lifestyle that I wanted,
Right.
and the
So
way I wanted to feel. Yeah, go
was
ahead.
there a catalyst, for that change? Did something happen? Did it?
Yeah.
How did that? How did that come about?
Well, up until the day that the catalyst, like there is that moment where, and I think we hear about this often, when people really reach that point where there really is no other option but to embrace change and
Right.
really become very proactive in our own lives to facilitate the change. We realize that we've
Right.
got to do something different than we've been doing to get different results. Otherwise,
Right.
Einstein said it best, right?
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing,
Exactly.
expecting different results. So leading up to that, my parents were great. They were very, very supportive. My parents separated when I was 9, which is interesting, at that time. And
Yeah.
years later, putting it all together with some support of a counselor and psychologist, I went through a period about 11 years ago where I just needed to start focusing inward, really focusing on my own mental health and my own issues and dealing with some old trauma. And what I realized, is I had a lot of unsettled stuff, okay,
Yeah.
from that period of my life. And a lot of that I carried forward later years. So it would always come up. And I won't get into that so much right now unless there's time. But what back in those days, my parents were very supportive from the standpoint they saw that I was hurting. They saw that I was in pain. They saw that I was unhappy. They just wanted to make their son feel better. They wanted him happy,
Right.
healthy and
Yeah.
happy. So they would often come and try to encourage me or invite me to try things like, how about we get you a trainer? You know, how about maybe we seek out a nutritionist, or we try to eat a little bit differently, or, you know, can we get you a gym membership? Like it just little asides, you know,
Yeah.
and I know they were coming from a place of love, but I'll tell you, when you're in that place of hurt and you already have a lot of self-doubt, and you know, if I ever saw my reflection, I would instantly, you know, just become very angry, you
Yeah.
know, upset at myself. And so here they are coming to try to help me, but I took it as an attack,
Yeah.
you know, and this is why I like to bring this up, because I think a lot of us can relate to this. We feel this at times in our life, where those that love us and care for us, they come to us wanting to support, they make suggestions, they make recommendations, they offer it up, and we take it as if they're saying we're not enough.
Right.
You know, we're not good enough. We need to change. And that's how I took it. And so, you know, I would push back. I would act out, and I could be mean at times, you know, just really not happy. And so over these years, you know, they basically just let me be, you know, and try to support me as best they could. And, but I had to come to grips with myself, you know, that, oh my goodness, if I'm not happy where I am, I'm going to have to take ownership of this to make some changes. But it didn't come to that by accident. You know, I remember being at my father's place one weekend, and I used to have this hack, you know, if I got in the shower, because I really didn't like seeing my reflection. Like there's very few pictures of me of that period in my life, because I would avoid social settings. I would avoid cameras. I just, no, you know, no.
Right.
I mean, I used to forge my own signature on notes so I didn't have to do phys ed class, because that meant I'd have to change in the change room with a bunch of other kids. And no way I'm taking my shirt off, you know?
Right.
And so my life was highly compromised that way. And I got really good at it. And one of my hacks was, you know, I'd get in the shower, turn on the water really, really hot, get it super steamy in there, stay in there an extra long time. So when I get out, the mirror would be covered in condensation, all fogged up. I wouldn't have to look at myself, you know, while I was toweling off. But this morning, my dad was rushing me because he had to get my brother and I somewhere. We could have been going bowling. I don't even know what it was, but it was mid-morning, and he's like, I'm going to have a shower. He's like, okay, but you got to hurry. And, you know, he's knocking on the door every few minutes, like, come on, we got to go. And so I rushed it that morning. I remember coming out of the shower, and I'm toweling off, and I can see my profile in the mirror. And I turn and I lock eyes, and I'm filled with anger, with hate, disgust, and I just lose it, uncontrollable sobbing, you know, and I felt overwhelmed with emotions, just like, how is this me? You know, like you're looking at yourself, but it's like you
Right.
don't know yourself, right? You don't recognize who you've become.
You recognize yourself.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, I'm 14 at this time, and it was like, oh my gosh, my limited scope in life at that period in time, my limited perspective on life, it felt really hard. You know, it was really hard
Right.
just acknowledging that this is me. And I started having thoughts, and you know, at periods of time throughout those years, I mean, I would entertain the idea of like, life would probably be just easier if it wasn't living, you know, like, wouldn't it be easier on my parents, be easier on me, like not having to deal with all this. But it never really felt like a true option. So as much as I entertained the idea, I never acted on it. And that morning, it was like, that's not really an option, even though it was still there, you know, that idea just would be so much
Yeah.
easier, because it was the easy way out, you know. But I didn't want to
Right.
do that to my parents, and I didn't want to do it myself. I did wanted to live, and but I wanted to like living. And so I found
Right.
myself
Right.
realizing I was at a fork in the road. You know, it was like, because, you know, up to 14, I had 5 years, and I was like, man, things weren't trending in a good direction. So I was aware enough to realize that, you know, for the next 5 years, I keep doing what I'm doing, I don't think it's going to be better than it is right now. In fact, I admit it will probably be worse. So that's to the right. Well, here's this path to the left that is completely unknown to me. It's still scary because I don't know what to do or what to expect, but maybe if I do something just a little bit differently, maybe I can change. Maybe I can get healthy, because I want to be healthy. I want to be happy. I want to like who I am. And so I came out of that bathroom with this conviction, you know, eyes all bloodshot from crying. And I approached my dad after I got dressed, and I'm like, I want to get healthy, Dad. I don't want to be this way anymore. And he must have realized, you know, you got to strike the iron while it's hot, because he had the awareness, and I'm so grateful for this, but you know, within a matter of days, he took me to buy a mountain bike. I said, I want a bike. You know, I want a bike because that way I didn't have to be anywhere public to work out, because that was not an option. I'm not going to a gym or any of that stuff. No way.
Right.
But a bike I could manage. I could ride a bike. I used to like riding a bike as a kid. And so it was like, could he get a bike? And it took me to get a bike. And that literally, like after that weekend, I just started cycling every day. I borrowed my dad's AM, or well, I guess it was an AM FM. You remember the Sony Walkman, the bright yellow ones?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think many of us have had those. You know, I'm totally
Yeah.
dating myself, but I borrowed it, and it was great because it had the automatic flip on it, right? It would always, you play one side and then flip to the other side. So I had on
Yeah.
one side, I had one of my favorite Canadian bands, Tragically Hip. And then on the other side, I had Alice in Chains. And I knew that I would just start riding. When the hip stopped playing and it flipped over and I started hearing Alice in Chains, time to turn around and go home.
Oh, nice.
And so it wasn't a matter of a distance. I just did it based on the music. So it was about an
Right.
hour, you know, I'd be out cycling, and it was hard. I'll admit it. It was really hard because I was really out of shape. I mean, going up a flight of stairs, I'd be out of breath and get a little bit of a glow on because I'd start sweating. And, you know, just everything was compounded, right? When you're unhealthy, when you're feeling not fit, right? Not healthy, not well, it just makes the usual minor things in life feel so much more like major things in life, you know, like way more difficult. And that's definitely the place I was in. And so that was it. I just committed to that. And I went to the library, I got books out on fitness and nutrition. And my kids still laughed. They're like, why don't you just Google it, Dad? And I'm like, I'm older than Google, you know?
Right.
Smell the pages of a book.
Yeah. And it's funny, right? And so I educated myself, right? And I just trusted that, hey, other people have done this. Other people have lost weight. My mom was a big fan of Richard Simmons. You remember Sweating to the Oldies?
Yeah.
I remember her putting on the old VHS tapes and just giving her. And I feel bad about this, but I used to make fun of her because I'd be like, whoa, you know, just so funny, right? And but it was awesome because, you know, she was role modeling that, you know, you could do something at home, just basic. And here's this guy, Richard Simmons, who had an inspiring story. And then he would always show the clips on his shows, right? Or the infomercials of the people that lost all this weight. And so I was like, people can lose weight, people can change. So why can't I? And so I just trusted the process, and I was consistent. And I want take that away. You know, it's like I was consistent with how I fueled myself, nourished myself. I was also very consistent with how I moved my body. And I started to feel a difference, you know, feel a change within just a matter of a month. Things started to just get better, you know, and I maintained that for, after about 20 months, I realized, you know, and without even really thinking about it, I just had this new lifestyle, but also I'd become quite fit, became quite healthy. And a lot of the psychological and emotional benefits of that also started to manifest. You know, I had more confidence in myself. I you know, all of a sudden started to hang out with certain people. And also one of the biggest extrinsic motivators for me was I just wanted a girlfriend. You know, I'm being completely honest. I did. I wanted, like, I mean, the underlying thing was I just wanted someone to want me. Right. I mean, that really was it. And so I had a girlfriend as well. And, you know, so life just was like, wow, this is amazing. And just to close out on this, what was super interesting, and this is really what was my catalyst for committing to this path as a life, you know, not just a lifestyle, but this is what I do for life, you know, like for not only my vocation, but it's just, I love doing it. I mean, if I didn't get paid to do it, I'd still do it, you know, because when I started, that's how it was. I wasn't getting paid. I was just doing it for fun and for free because I just wanted to help people. But at 17, friends of my parents would come around the house, you know, and often I would just think they're coming to say hi to my mom, you know, or whatever. And they'd come in, they say hi to my mom, and then they pull me aside and be like, oh, Dad, can I ask you a few questions? And because they'd seen this transformation, this change that I'd had, right? And so they would come and pick my brain. They would ask about fitness. They'd ask about nutrition. They would say what they were doing, what they wanted to achieve. And I was like, you care what I have to say? Like you're asking, are you sure you want to ask me? You were asking me this? And that was the first time in my life, you know, 17 years of life where I felt like people actually cared about what I had to say, but I also felt I had value to offer. And it felt so good to help people. And that's what got me excited about coaching and mentorship and just helping people with transformations. And, you know, fast forward now, 44 years old, I'm still doing it. but that's sort of where it started, you know? Yeah.
That's incredible that you were able to act on that at that age. I mean, kudos to you. My goodness,
Thank you.
hard
Yeah.
road.
Well, I want people to
So,
know it was not easy. Okay. Like it's,
right, right.
but,
Sure.
but big changes rarely are easy. I mean, it's easy to get started, but it's
Right.
challenging to sustain it. But one thing for certain, it's always worth it. It's always worth it. You know, it's like any challenge
So,
or obstacle we overcome. When you look back on it, again, when you're going through it, it's hard, right? Like you're surrounded by it, you're engulfed in it. You can't see anything else but the challenge and the obstacle. But as soon as you get through it on the other side and you turn around and look back and it's like, is that all it was? You know, it's amazing how our perspective changes so quickly as soon as we get through that challenging bit. And,
right.
and so I have to remind myself of that. And I have at a number of periods of my life where other challenges have popped up. It was a nice lesson to learn that early on in life because
Yep.
I realized change is possible, you know, and a lot of the times
And it kind of goes,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, kind of goes along with what we were talking about, pre-show about the, that coin I have, that the obstacle is the way, that sometimes,
Yes.
we get. And the other thing that's kind of important about that is that, there's a place here called the Great Sand Dunes. And if you climb up to the top of the first one you can see, it's like, then there's another and another and another. And I think that's another important thing to remember, and not only in wellness, but in life, is that we never reach the top of the mountain. I mean, it's always,
Right.
there's always another hill, and we always have to keep working and keep climbing. And I think as long as we can resign ourselves to this fact that we always need to grow, reevaluate, and, in order to make those positive changes. But another thing, what I was going to ask you about was on the nutrition side. You talked about getting the bike and getting out there every day and exercising, but did you make some big nutritional changes as well?
The nutritional change, well, I mean, they were big, but not insurmountable. I think there's a difference there. When I say big shift, it was because, my mom, and just to give you a little bit more context to how life was at that time, my parents separated and we'd see our dad every other weekend. He had a business that he was still building, and
Mhm.
yeah, and he just had a wonderful work ethic as well. And at that time, I kind of resented his work schedule and the fact that he worked so much. But it was later on in life, I realized that I actually admire it a ton. and
Right.
and I modeled a lot of his work ethic. And my mom had a similar work ethic. And at that time, after my dad had left and got his own place, and my mom's looking after my brother and I full time. She's also working full time, as well as going back to school to get her master's. And
Right.
so her life, and then on top of that, she's trying to find a potential next mate, next life partner.
Right.
And so
Right.
she was busy, like really busy. And so my brother and I would tend to have a fair bit of time to ourselves, especially as we got over the age of 10 and we'd have more autonomy, and it was just based on circumstances. And so my mom would often buy foods that were quick to produce, quick to cook, easy
Right.
for my brother and I. And that'd be like pizza pockets, the little McCain pizzas. I mean, Costco. One of the things I used to eat a lot of was, those muffin trays at Costco, right? Like those are not muffins. I'm sorry. They're little cakes.
Right.
And,
Huge.
and they're like 1,500 calories. Like I didn't understand what calories, but once I educated myself and understood how food works, like macronutrients, calories, just really foundational stuff as it relates to nutrition, not super complicated stuff. Like I'm not going to get into like the Krebs cycle and how creatine works and how do our muscles produce and lactic acid. That all came later. I just wanted to understand the fundamentals. And as soon as I understood that, and I understood how to read labels,
Right.
everything started to change. And I started asking myself, okay, well, it's really hard to find foods without sugar. I was like, holy smokes, because sugar wasn't vilified back then like it is now, right? I mean, back then it was really fat was vilified. That was during that whole time. Do you remember during the 80s and even during the 90s, they were like, fat's bad for you. Don't eat fat.
Right.
You'll have a heart attack. It's funny now, what's one of the most popular diets out there? The keto diet, which is pretty much all fat, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me started. There's a whole nother conversation there. But with the basics, I just started to eat more whole foods. I took an interest in actually starting to prepare meals for our family, because my mom would come home, it would be after 6 by the time she got home after work, and I'd already been home for a few hours. I had this new passion for getting healthy, and I took it upon myself to take a lot of raw ingredients and start making meals. I didn't have a large breadth of meals, but I got really good at making a couple, like stews and chilies, especially, Ontario in the winter, it's cold. You want warm food. So I got really good at making that kind of stuff. And, less things out of boxes, more things that were whole food, unprocessed. And that was really the gist of it. And I cut sugar out, started drinking lots of water. Like that's it. That along with the fitness, just moving my body every day with a little bit of purpose. And when I say with purpose, it's like I'm moving my body to elicit a positive response, such as get a bit of a glow. As my wife says, I don't sweat, I glisten. Well, I sweat. Okay. I sweat a lot. And I love it. And so that's what I would look for. Just sweat a little bit every day and watch what I eat. Good things are going to happen. And to be honest, though, at the start, it was a big change, right? So you get the headaches, you get the, there's lethargy, like your body's like rebelling because, 5 years of doing the thing a certain way and trying to change it overnight, obviously there's pushback, and just physically, especially, also psychologically and emotionally. I mean, there's lots of stuff happening, but I trusted that it would get better. And the thing that really helped me shift, like, go from, okay, this is a good idea, I think it might work, this may work, it might work, to the point where it's like, this is working and I'm doing this and I love it and I'm going to keep doing it. And that was about 3.5 weeks in. You reminded me of this when you mentioned the dunes, because this was Concession Street Road, which is sort of it was the border of our town, right? There's always those little roads that are sort of at the very outskirt, and it's sort of that barrier that everybody would refer to. And I lived just off of it. So I'd cycle up it, and there was this hill. And I say a hill because that's really what it is. But to me at that time, it was Everest. Okay. It was a big hill. And here I am, this obese kid on his bike riding up to this hill. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a big hill. I don't know if I can do this. And I just remember trying and getting about a third of the way up. And it was just like, I'm not moving. I'm like floating right now. And all of a sudden, and inside I was like, I should just turn around and go back. I mean, I obviously can't do this. I just failed at the very first hill I came to. I can't do this. Like, what am I thinking? But then, I'm getting off the bike. I'm like, I know what's at the top of that hill. I know it flattens out and I know where it goes. So I just walked the bike up, and I did. And then I got back to cycling again, listening to my tape and just going about my day. And every day I'd come back to that hill. It was about 3.5 weeks in. I ascended the top without getting off the bike. Made it all the way to the top, and 3.5 weeks. And when I got to the top of that hill, my mountain, it was like, oh my gosh, I did that. And because, the number on the scale wasn't changing a lot. My belt size wasn't changing a lot. Like certain metrics, numbers, like, how the fitness industry works. And I got a love-hate relationship with it, because we're so quick to quantify things. How much weight are you? What's your dress size? How fast can you run a mile? How many push-ups can you do? Like, we quantify things so quickly. And I want to qualify things. I want to look at how do things actually affect our life, the emotional connection to the things of why we do what we do, especially when it comes to lifestyle change. And so when I got to the top of that mountain, that hill, I was like, I did this. And my belief in myself was like highest it's ever been. And at that moment, I knew, like, this is happening. This is working because I'm doing it, and that was it. That was my turning point. In Canada, we have a network called TSN, which is the sports network. It's like the ESPN in the States. And we have a TSN turning point. This is always the highlights where they show the games and they'll show where, it's that moment in a game where things just switch. And, the team that's losing, all of a sudden, whoa, they make a play, they score, and now the energy shifts and they end up winning, right? And I call that moment in my life a TSN turning point. That was it. So yeah, that's sort of it in a nutshell,
Well, it's a couple of cool things. Number one is you unknowingly at the time, but you had a measure. So, you started up the hill third of the way, but you were able to work your way up, which kind of brings up a couple math equations to think about. And one of the biggest for me was thinking about, okay, how fast does it take to eat a calorie versus how quick does it take you to burn one off? And this is, because a lot of people like, I'm gonna continue to I'm gonna continue eating this way, but I'm gonna go out and walk or jog or do this or do that, but not make a nutritional change. And then they like, well, I can't make nothing's happening for me. And so I know the numbers that I've gotten is like 3,500 calories equals a pound. So basically, if everything is in equilibrium and you're where you need to be, you're eating your 2,000 calories and life is good, you're holding. If you eat 3,500 extra calories that week, you will gain 1 pound, somewhere in there. I'm sure it's approximate. But so if you think about how much, like me, I think about my little package of M&Ms and a package of chips. I don't even know what they are, probably, 5, 6, 700 extra calories right there that it took me about 5 minutes to consume. And then last night I walked 45 minutes on a treadmill, pretty decent pace, a little bit of incline. I was like 100, and I didn't put my weight in, so it was probably judging me off of a little slider built person. But anyway, I burned, about 145 calories. So if we just stop and think for a minute, it's sometimes it's input and output. It's like, what are we putting in our mouth and how are we burning that off through the day? It's a huge awakening, or can be. It was for me anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think you're spot on with that realization, because it's true, right? Like, it doesn't take much to, especially when we're looking at certain types of foods, and there's a lot of content out in the world now that talks about not all calories are equal,
Right.
and yes and no. There's truth to that, and it's true. Like you eat a calorie of sugar, you eat a calorie of spinach, your body treats it very differently, very differently.
Right.
To get that calorie of spinach might be a cup of spinach in volume, where we're talking about less than a cube of sugar, right?
Exactly.
It's very different. And also that composition in spinach, it's mainly fiber, right? And we already know fiber doesn't get processed by our body. So, and this is the neat thing about the keto diet, right? Like they talk about different types of carbohydrates. And if there's some that are basically like net zero. You could eat the calories, but you actually end up, it's like eating celery, right? You actually burn more calories than what the calories are provided in celery. Because it's mainly just water and fiber. Your body doesn't process it, but we need fiber too. And, but so that's a great realization though, because when you start putting in that perspective, it's like, okay, well, I could have this, but that could be 300 burpees. Whew. I always tell people you should do it in the equation. If you make it burpees, not walking, you really look at it differently. Because I used to do that with some of my clients. I'd be like, it's okay. Treat every burpee like 1 calorie. So you want to eat an extra 100 calories today? It's okay. Do it. But you got to do an extra 100 burpees when you work out. And they're like, okay, it ain't worth that.
One burpee, forget it.
There's another concept in finance. It's compounding, which is kind of the genesis for a lot of the financial calculations, and how again, that was a huge awakening for me as a young person to figure all that out. But there's a good book called The Slight Edge, and I think everybody should read it. And it's this compounding factor, is that had you gone out and ridden your bike one day and threw it in the garage, you would never gotten up to the top of the hill. Or if you'd have read it one day and then 6 months later taken it back out. And so it's that compounding effect of riding that bike every day, or eating the right combination. And we always say, we're not doctors, please seek medical attention, to get your diet straightened down, get a dietitian, whatever you need to do. But let's just say, if you eat right multiple days in a row, the compounding effect is unbelievable. Versus, like I go through those spells, like oh, I'm really eating right today and I'm going to the gym. And then tomorrow it's like, what's that pizza guy's deliver? What's that pizza number again? Where we can call up. So I think that consistency factor that you talked about, compounding, however you want to talk about it, it's important. It's important in a lot of aspects of life, but also when we're talking about getting healthy.
Yes. Oh, you're so valid. Like one of my favorite books, complementary to that book, is The Compound Effect. And that was one that really opened my eyes to that whole concept, right? Like, as much as we all love compound interest, compounding the negative in our life, not so good.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
and
amazing.
I look at it that way too. Is like last night, if I'm in the gym walking for 45 minutes, I'm not at home sitting on the couch eating for 45 minutes.
Yes,
So it's like it's a double good too as well.
Yeah, that's really
But
smart. Yeah.
The other thing is motivation. Like me, we were talking, me and Terry were talking a little bit last night or this morning. Like I have had a few days out of the gym, got back in it, and it lifts me so much in so many ways. I feel better physically, mentally. I mean, today I've been like so alert and a lot of good creative thoughts. But it's not the problem is not the gym. It's the distance between my chair at my desk and the gym front door. If I can conquer that distance, I'm awesome. But I just have to be honest and say, I have trouble conquering that.
You're not alone at all. I think we can all relate very much to what you just shared. And I often will say, motivation is great, but we're also often looking for things outside of us to motivate us to move. Where I'd like to kind of flip it a little bit and say, well, what would inspire you to move? What would be that internal connection that would just get you fired up every time? So you go from like, I really need to go to the gym, or I have to go to the gym today, to, you know what? I get to go to the gym today. That's freaking awesome. Now it's not easy. If it was, I'd just give you like, oh yeah, here's the formula, checks in the mail, but it's not so simple, because it is a little bit of reflecting, but also taking some time to actually ask ourselves, well, what is the life I want to be living 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How about 20 years from now? What is that lifestyle? What are the things I want to be able to do without thinking about it? Right? And it often is some of the most basic things. Like, I remember a few years back, my mom going on a bus trip with a bus tour in Scotland with my stepdad, and my mom has battled with her weight most of her life. And she's also now got some arthritis in her knees, and that's from a past car accident. So, there's not much we can do with that. So there is certain things, but, adding the extra weight on top of the arthritic knees or ankle, it compounds things in a very unhelpful way. But I remember thinking, and when she was talking about it, like, there was a lot of times where they would get off the bus at various places and she'd have to be required to walk, but she wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
And it is such a basic thing that we take for granted. It's just our ability to be mobile, to move, to care for ourselves. And so it's being that honest with oneself and recognizing, okay, well, this is how much I've changed in the last 10 years. If you look back 10 years ago, where were you at health-wise then? And where are you now? And now it's like forward setting, right? It's like, okay, well, in 10, 20 years of the habits and the lifestyle that I'm living now, do I envision myself being able to continue to live the quality of life that I want to?
Yeah.
I think
that's
always worked well for me, is getting very clear on that. So,
yeah. And I think the compounding factor is something that I think about with that as well, is that, getting to my age, it's like the, core behaviors going forward are going to be compounded to a point of, like you said, just, is it shorten your life? Is it, make you less mobile where you just can't enjoy it? And I do have type 2 diabetes, so I'm always trying to keep that under control. And I was reading some the top 10 causes of death came across the internet the other day.
Mm.
So diabetes is like number 7, but then like number 9 is renal failure, and then the footnote that this is mostly caused by diabetes. So it's like it basically ranks number 7 and number 9 on the top 10. So these are important things because not only can they kill you, shorten your life, but I think that they can debilitate you into a place that nobody really wants to go live. So many important factors, especially the older we get. And it would have been awesome had I been thinking about this more 10, 20 years ago, but we are where we are. So now I have to think about, I have to redouble that effort because I don't want my lifespan to outlive my health span.
Yes. Right. And very well said, and I agree. I mean, I think it really comes down to just, man, I'm not wanting to oversimplify it, please. Like those that are listening, like I know it's not always easy, but it will always be worth it. I know that for a fact, after being through periods of unhealth in my own life numerous times, and sometimes because of my own volition, sometimes not, sometimes just, I was diagnosed with like a chronic autoimmune disease, about 8 years ago. And that rocked my world. It did, because leading up to that, when they were doing all those tests and the bone marrow biopsies, they thought I had leukemia. There's a lot of fear there. And I was like, how did that happen? How did that happen?
Right.
And it came back eventually that it's an autoimmune disease. It's still pretty serious, but fortunately for me, based on lifestyle choices, I can mitigate a lot of the symptoms. I can lead a life that's very high in quality,
Right.
And I'm very optimistic that I'm going to get the quantity too, in the years and the experiences. But I've definitely had to shift some of my lifestyle habits based on that appearing in my life. So sort of what you're sharing about type 2 diabetes, when we have these health, I don't want to call them issues, but there really are just these moments, right, where we're presented with health challenges, and sometimes they come based on lifestyle choices, and sometimes they just happen, right? And we don't absolutely know what was the trigger. Like I like to think, man, I was living a pretty healthy, active life. I eat really well, like I manage stress okay, at least maybe not as well as I could have 10 years ago, but much better now. And, so I'm very aware. And I think it's that mindfulness, that awareness that we have of just the repercussion of some of our actions. And
being present. Just knowing what's going on right at the moment.
And I think we all are aware, aren't we? Like to some level, we're aware of what we're doing, but
subconsciously, whatever.
Oh, it's tough though, right?
I think that you bring up a good point about about getting sick, and I think about it like athletes, is that you see these guys on the just on the American football field. Let's take those guys. They get hit hard, a lot of falling. Now, if I was out there and somebody hit me that hard or fell down, that'd be the end of me. But because they're in such awesome shape, they are able to take a lot of that punishment. And so I think we can translate that too into to our body as our health, is that if we have a healthy body, if we're eating right and we're doing everything we need to do, we are able to fight some things off better than if we were unhealthy, and then we are able to survive through some of those things that we really don't have a choice, that may afflict us in some way, but we are much able to navigate through that if we are healthy and in good shape. So just something else I think we, always good to keep in mind.
It's so true. And actually that reminded me, the doctors, I remember my hematologist, especially, like she figures I've had this probably most of my life. It's just because of my lifestyle choices and the way I just live my life. It really masked any of the symptoms from ever appearing, and even if they were there, but I started putting things 2 and 2 together, because I would get sick or I would get a cut or a bruise, and it would take a long time to heal, and like I get like the flu, and I'd be out for almost 2 weeks sometimes. And I'm like, I'm just like, wow, I don't get sick often, but when I do, do I get sick? And my wife used to bug me all the time, right? Because before we knew about the condition, she'd be like, get out of bed, man. Like, this is just a man cold. Come on.
You get a day. You get a day. Come on. We're
no, exactly.
babies. I mean, really.
Damn it. You sound just like but she would. And then, it was funny after the diagnosis came down, she's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize all this was going on. But it was interesting, right? Like when being someone that also was in the fitness equipment industry for 17 years, I used to deal with a lot of people that would come in to buy equipment, for their homes or for their facilities, but specifically in the homes. And very often I get people coming in and I'd be like, oh, what brings you in today? You look for some strength, some cardio, what's up? And, well, my doctor sent me here. It's, you could tell they didn't want to be there. They're there because the doctor said, you got to go do this. You're going to die. Right. And they come in, they buy the equipment. They have the best of intentions to use it. And then they don't. I mean, this is the cliche, right? We go on like the Craigslist, the marketplaces, and look at the equipment. And it's like, you're lucky if you find a picture of just the product without clothes on it. Right.
It turns into a shelf or a closet.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a few of those.
I've seen those background pictures of the, take a Christmas picture and then in the background you see the treadmill with all the laundry hanging on the side of it.
Yes. And I used to hate that about the industry, that cliche was even existing, that people would joke about it. They come in and I'm going to buy this, but I'll probably just end up as a coat hanger. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You just told me that your doctor said you're going to die. like what is going on here? And it just makes me wonder, like that was something that used to really eat at me, because I want to help people. I want them to feel empowered that they can make the changes that they want to make. And so it used to frustrate me, make me feel sad and make me question a lot of time, what am I doing? Because I didn't feel I could really support them in the change. I'd sell them the equipment and then, you do some follow-ups here and there to see how they're doing. But often they would never reply because they feel guilty to reply because they'd admit that they weren't using it, So it was rarely a pleasant follow-up where I'd get a message, oh, we're loving it. It's great. Yeah, I've lost 20 pounds. Every once in a while we get that, but it wasn't the average. It wasn't even the majority, so that was also fueling me for making some big changes just in my career, because I was like, I didn't feel like I was really making a dent, and
so that's what I was going to ask is how do you transition out of selling the equipment to what you're doing now?
Well, for me, it was this. I wanted to help people by just giving them information, just really providing info and people take it or leave it. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted to share. And it was fortunately for me, like when I started blogging about 14 years ago, like I just started putting content up and I was sort of inspired because I had read Gary Vaynerchuk's first printing of Crush It. Do you guys remember Crush It? Did you ever read that? Or this is like back when he still had like Wine Library, right? Like his old YouTube channel. And before Gary Vaynerchuk was, dominated the internet. But I remember reading that because I used to do a lot of marketing for my past company, and I'd be responsible with helping with some of the purchases of our media buys. And we were buying TV, we were buying print, buying radio. And, we'd spend the same amount of money every year. And I was like, man, we're not getting the same return here. We'd be like scratching around. What is going on here? And it's like, well, this thing called the internet and the Google, maybe it's a good thing we take a look at that.
Yeah.
And so we did. And I read Gary Vaynerchuk's book and I was like, wow, this guy's onto something. This makes so much sense. So I started really embracing social media and I started blogging just to create content to share it with people because I thought that would complement what I was doing on the fitness equipment side. It's like, here's equipment, but I also got some great articles. I got some programs. I got some free information that will support you with this equipment that you're buying. And so that was sort of the intention behind it. But then I realized, not everybody has access to equipment. Not everybody has the means to have equipment in their home. And so I started to just change some of my belief systems around, I used to be a gym rat. You know, I loved going to the gym. That was my main thing. I'd go to the gym, I work out. And I was like, well, that's what everybody should do. You know, again, this is in my 20s, right? And
Right, right.
approaching my 30s. I was still of that mindset, like this is the solution. This is the best option for everybody. They need this. And as they say, I drank the Kool-Aid, and I drank a lot of it. And I was trying to serve it to anybody that was thirsty, right? And so I started just talking about the body as a piece of equipment, calisthenics, right? Like just body weight based
Right.
movements, because then there really is no excuse. I mean, you got enough room to
Right.
put a towel on the floor. You can get an amazing workout in that space. Like
Yeah.
you can get a park outside your door. That's a gym.
Right.
There's really no excuse. You travel, you hang out in a hotel every once in a while because you're traveling a lot. No problem. That room, you can do this between the two beds, like,
Yeah.
and I started creating a lot of content that really supported that for people. And,
Oh,
which created a major riff, in my company, because I had a lot of staff at that time. I also had a partner that was the CEO, and my personal brand started to outgrow the business. And he's like, Dai, I remember one of my articles went viral on Reddit and crashed my site a couple of times because I wasn't prepared for that kind of a spike, and it was like 99 workouts you can do without equipment. And it got shared all over the place. And I remember all the staff, as well as my partner at the time. He's like, "You're gonna put us out of business. What are you doing? You are a main
working against you."
Yeah, we were one of the top fitness equipment retailers in North America. And here we are, the main guy. Who's like, I was also the face of the company, so I'd often do the media stuff and all that. And here I am saying, you don't need equipment. But the funny thing was, it actually increased sales. It increased sales because it increased our brand recognition. It also increased trust in our marketplace, and people realized I was more motivated to help people just get well than I was to sell them anything.
Right.
And so that sort of fed into my desire to eventually leave, because I was just like, this isn't a fit anymore. I'm not feeling like I'm making a big enough shift in people's lives here. And as opportunities started to grow based on some of the things I was doing outside of work, I realized we had options. But more than that, my wife had a desire for us to be a full-time family, to travel, while the kids still thought we were cool.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's out the window.
You know that, Terry, right? That door closes pretty quick.
Girls, yes.
Yes.
And so, I left a career of 17 years and sort of just embraced a little bit of the unknown. I trusted that we'll figure it out. And I had written a book at the same time as I was, saying sayonara to that career. And so at the same time it was published, I quit my job. My wife quit hers a month later. A couple months after that, we took the kids out of school and gave away all our stuff, packed up what we decided to keep in our SUV, and just started traveling. We started chasing the sun. We drove down to California and all around the States, and back up to Canada in the summer, drove around there and back to the States, and then eventually made our ways overseas. And we ended up in Bali, and we lived there for over 2 years before coming back to Vancouver. And just before COVID, we came back because our kids wanted to finish high school here in Vancouver.
How exciting.
The last 6 years have been a bit of a ride, I'll tell you that,
Yeah, no kidding. Well, we thank you so much for taking time out of your day. One question I always like to ask is, so do you have a tool? I mean, it could be an app, program, or ritual, habit, whatever that you feel really adds value to your wellness journey, and that you just couldn't live without every day?
Oh, well, there's a couple habits I know have been really, really powerful just in my life. A couple of which is just moving my body every day with purpose for a minimum of 15 minutes, right? Like just a minimum, just 15 minutes. I mean, it's not very much time. Everyone's got at least 15 minutes that they can just dedicate to just moving their body, and hopefully creating a little bit of a sweat. So you get a little bit of a positive effect. Also meditation. And I encourage people, minimum 5 minutes a day. And also feeding our mind, minimum 10 minutes a day, feed your mind with something positive. Maybe it's a TED Talk. Maybe it's a great podcast, right? Maybe it's just reading a great book or listening to a book. And if you put those three things together, that's 30 minutes. That's 2% of every 24 hours.
Wow.
And that's it.
great.
I mean, that's the minimum I encourage people. Because people will say, is that all I got to do? I go, it's the least you deserve. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's the least anybody deserves. Like
exactly.
you deserve to love yourself enough to give yourself at least 30 minutes a day for your body, your mind,
Right.
and your spirit. And I say,
Yeah.
and I say, if you start to see some good things happening and you want to do more things, lean into that. Don't fight
Yeah.
that. Don't think I'm only gonna do 30 minutes. Like just lean into it. Do what you feel inspired or drawn to do. Because all it takes is a little bit of that positive momentum to start to kick in. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how that can just pick up speed and it'll open your eyes to a lot of things. And I do have a 5-day sugar detox. That's just a free program on my website, as well as a 28-day program that's also free. It models my book, gives people the workouts, gives them the full program. No hidden agenda here. It's just, I just keep giving all that stuff back. And
Let's mention the name of the book.
yeah.
Make
Oh,
sure we get that out there.
well, let me just do this real quick. Let me.
The Whole Life Manifesto.
The Whole Life
Okay,
Fitness
yeah,
Manifesto.
please,
Hello.
Dana.
But I give it away for free. My publisher doesn't like this, but I give away the digital copy for free and the program basically for free on my website. So, hey, if you want to buy it on Amazon or, at Barnes and Noble or whatever, hey, feel free. That's the plug, but it is free on my website. So there's that too.
Yeah, why don't you tell us your website so people can go over there, and we'll be sure and include all that in the show notes. But tell people how
Sure.
they can find you, and if they want to reach out and get a hold of you, how's the best way to do that?
Oh, thanks, Roy. It's pretty simple, actually. It's the one advantage, as you were asking me, Terry, at the beginning, before we started this interview. My name's pretty unique. Dai Manuel, D-A-I, and then Manuel, M-A-N-U-E-L. It's a Welsh/Portuguese name. So I'm a bit of a mix, as I say to everybody. I'm Canadian. But if you go to daimanuel.com, you'll find all sorts of stuff. And I do say, like, for those that are listening to this, if it's spring 2021, you'll be seeing a new website very soon, which is a lot more user-friendly. But there's over 1,500 articles and resources there that are all accessible. They're there geared to help people get more out of life and help them get out of their own way to really lean into being their happiest, healthiest self. And so I always invite people, just, hey, have at it. And if you want to have a conversation, reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram, because that's the easiest way. And I'm most active on those channels. But that's it. I just want to acknowledge you two, though. I think this is one, very brave to just be vulnerable and share your journey as it relates to living healthier, more active, and making these changes. And I think it's very inspiring as well to see you sharing your story, but also highlighting other people's journeys, their tips, their tricks, their strategies. And I just think it's really, really cool. And I do like the name, Feeding Fatty. I think it's just so fantastic. So I just wanted to acknowledge you two, and it's been an honor to be here today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. We appreciate it. And it's, we get to meet a lot of great people like yourself, and we get to, bless our listeners with, not only your personal story, but your profession as well. So thank you so much for sharing with us. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah, you've been very inspiring. It's been an honor to listen to your story, and I'm so glad that you were able to share that with us today.
Thank you, Terry, and thank you, Roy. It's very kind of you to say. Again, it's a bit of a love fest happening right now, but you guys are awesome, though, and I really appreciate. I mean, of course, if I can be of any help, please know that I'm always here, and that goes for anybody out there. And I take that offer not lightly. It's very serious, and I always say, like, I'm just here to help. So reach out anytime.
Right.
And it's more of that on your website. I recommend to everybody, go and check them out.
Thank you.
It's well worth it.
Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for us on this episode. Again, we appreciate our listeners as well. You can find us, of course, at www.feedingfatty.com. We will have the audio component and the video component up there as well. We are on all the major platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and a lot more out there. Of course, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, always there. And we'll have the copy of the video will be up on YouTube as well. So go out there, take a look, take a listen. If you have a good story of your own, don't hesitate to reach out to either myself or Terry. We'd love to hear from you, and hopefully we can get you on the show soon. So until next time, that's going to be it for us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.